It always starts the same way. A subtle, almost imperceptible pattern at first. She looks at you not as you truly are, in your full complexity, but as an instrument to satisfy something primal and powerful. You feel it in her gaze, that flicker of hope, or perhaps hunger. You want to believe you're being truly seen, but the truth is you're being evaluated, measured like a blank canvas waiting for her masterpiece. But this masterpiece isn't you. It never was about you. Arthur Schopenhauer warned us. With surgical precision, he mapped what he called the will, that blind, insatiable force driving all existence. In his investigations, he discovered something terrifying about romantic relationships. People don't fall in love with each other, but with the illusion they project onto others. They fall in love with the role you play in their desires and unfulfilled needs. Most don't realize they're doing this. They navigate these currents unconsciously. You might think she's choosing you for your unique qualities, but what she's really choosing is the function you serve in her psychological script, a carefully selected puppet for her internal movie. When you inevitably stop fitting that script, she doesn't change the story. She simply changes the actor. Schopenhauer called this the veil of Maya, the illusion that distorts our perception. For him, romantic love is nature's ingenious trick, a biological mechanism disguised as noble sentiment. And you fall for it because you confuse being desired with being known, being chosen with being understood. When the fantasy collapses under reality's weight, you're left confused and humiliated. But you didn't necessarily do anything wrong. You simply stopped being a convincing actor in someone else's play. The only way out, according to Schopenhauer, is through the denial of the will, recognizing the blind impulses controlling us and developing the strength to say no to them. This is uncomfortable truth. Most men never begin this journey of self-awareness. You've been trained to seek external approval, to let others define your worth. As long as you operate under this premise, you'll keep playing the same role, being replaced whenever the audience gets bored. The denial of the will requires confronting the parts of yourself you've buried, the weak, insecure, broken aspects. It demands that you stop blaming others for not seeing you and start seeing yourself with radical honesty. Here's what Schopenhauer knew. You don't become a man by being chosen by a woman. You become a man by choosing yourself, by prioritizing your own development and integrity. You don't earn worth through her affection, but by standing firm alone, fully awake to reality, responsible for your choices. A man who has genuinely faced his will cannot be easily seduced by illusions. He becomes the author of his own reality, the conscious shaper of his destiny. The greatest tragedy of modern men is not rejection, but their willingness to contort themselves into whatever will grant them approval. You call this compromise, partnership, even love. Schopenhauer called it self-betrayal. Men who ignore their inner development become slaves to illusion, yielding like wet clay to shapes demanded by people who don't even know their own desires. You become mere masks, smiling, agreeing, performing, until you forget who you were before the performance began. Women sense this lack of authentic core. What you think will make her love you, your obedience, predictability, constant availability, becomes why she loses interest. The human instinct isn't drawn to comfort or subservience, but to mystery, challenge, to the individual who cannot be fully defined or controlled. The moment you become completely transparent, without clear boundaries or a core identity, you don't become more lovable. You become invisible, disposable. Yet most men remain trapped in this cycle. They fear loneliness more than being false to themselves. They'd rather play a comfortable role than face the terror of standing without external validation. But until a man embraces that fundamental solitude, he will never be genuinely free. Denying the will requires you to symbolically die before you die, to let false versions of yourself burn away so something authentic can emerge. This path is lonely. As you see the subtle games people play, their social masks, their self-serving lies, when you try to share these observations, they mock you, calling you cynical, arrogant. But you're not the problem. You're the mirror, and people despise mirrors that reflect what they don't want to face. The greatest danger comes from your own self-deception, that inner voice with false certainty and unearned authority. If you don't confront yourself as a temporary manifestation of the impersonal will, you become its prisoner, projecting its unacknowledged aspects onto others. When you reach that hard-won place of self-acceptance, you don't become cold or distant. You become authentically real, deeply rooted in your being. That's when genuinely compatible women will be drawn to you, not because you need them, but because you don't. Your wholeness becomes your most potent attractor. The man who sees through illusion isn't typically welcomed by society. He's often feared, misunderstood, labeled as distant or critical. But he's become untouchable by common means of influence, unmanipulable by emotional tactics. What you call passionate love is often a refusal to carry the weight of your own soul. It's easier to project that responsibility onto a woman, to make her your purpose. But when she realizes she wasn't designed to carry another's soul, she will drop it, and you'll feel betrayed. But you shouldn't. That moment of disillusionment is when you face the truth that becoming a man was never her work, but always yours. You have two choices: blame her and become bitter, or turn inward and begin the work of becoming whole without needing someone else to complete you. The woman you're looking for, out there, is often a reflection of your disowned self. Until you integrate that part, every relationship will be a performance, every connection a transaction. But when you integrate your perceived emptiness, you become a man who no longer chases validation. You stand rooted in your truth and begin to attract people who desire truth, who are capable of meeting your authenticity. She won't try to change you or fall in love with the fantasy of you. She will stand before you, raw and real, as a fellow human walking her own path alongside yours. No masks, no exhausting games of power and control. Most will never experience this level of connection because they'll quit the journey before crossing the desert of self-confrontation. They'll settle for the comfortable fantasy because facing who they truly are feels too unbearable. But if you possess the courage to keep stripping away every false layer, you will eventually find yourself whole, authentic, free. And then women will no longer be your primary source of identity or self-worth. They will become partners, not prizes. Mirrors reflecting your truth, not mothers comforting your immaturities. Allies in growth, not saviors from your responsibilities. Schopenhauer didn't leave an easy map to happiness. He left a warning that every man who refuses to confront himself will become a slave to others' illusions. But he also left a challenge: to stop blaming women, to stop seeking validation in others' eyes, to start choosing yourself. Because the man who chooses himself, fully, unapologetically, cannot be controlled by fantasy. He becomes the true author of his own life, the sovereign director of his destiny.